It has been a while since I've shared a full flip through of one of my completed journals. This one took me about 3 months to officially complete. I love the colors, I love the construction of it. It's definitely out of my comfort zone because I haven't worked with these colors before. I used a new binding technique, like always, since I like to play around and experiment each time. This is the spine, and I placed the little tie closure on the spine. By having the closure be on the spine instead of on the sides where you see the pages and the ruffles, kind of create this effect of like a little skirt at the bottom. Very feminine. I love that technique a lot, and I think I will be using this maybe for my Christmas journal. I'm still not sure. But lots of layers everywhere, and it is a layered construction to the cover. On the cover, I placed this wallpaper. This is part of Meadow Morning, and this is the real wallpaper that I just kind of ripped apart. You know when you go to an old house and they have wallpaper peeling on the walls? So I just tore a little piece of the wallpaper on the bottom, and then on the top I added a different part. But I really liked how that looked. It gave it a little bit more of a vintage feel, I think, to it. And it goes with the story of the journal as well. So then I just embellished it with buttons and ruffles and my usual layering. I wanted to mimic an old book cover that looked withered and worn. So this actually, the brown part, is not real. It's not vintage. I actually constructed it from scratch. And I just love how aged it looks. And all the distressing that I had to do to make it look like this was really rewarding and part of the process. You can see the layers on the bottom of the journal. This is a piece of a Victorian shirt, a doily, lace, there's crepe paper, sari silk, so you can see so many layers just on the bottom. And that's the top view. Not as interesting as the bottom, but it's still beautiful nonetheless. This is from one of my digital kits in the heart. And then in the corner where I ripped off the wallpaper, as you can see, this sentiment right here, you paint. That's actually one of my sentiments from my washi tape that will be restocked in the shop in a couple of weeks. I just love how it looks as if you wrote on the little piece of paper, but it's actually just washi. This is some vintage sari, and I just collaged various fabrics. I've been layering different kinds of fabrics to create the back covers, and you can see here I've collaged these textiles, and this is a little hanky. Then there's a layer of silk, and then there's a little doily. I really like adding as many layers as I can. So the closure that I made, like the little belt that I wanted to create, I made this out of a piece of Victorian velvet. I used some French little filigree pieces and a millinery pearl right in the center. This is a really old bronzy copper button that I've had forever, and I loved using it on here. It goes with the style and the theme. And then I have a ton of these cute little filigrees that I've also just stitched. I love how this looks on the side. I've also distressed a pretty little key. I will leave all of the digitals that I used to create this journal, the cover, the inside pages, in my link below. And you can head over to my Etsy shop and find all of the printables so that you can also print them out at home to use in your beautiful projects. Now, if you're watching this in the week of Black Friday, I am having my annual Black Friday sale, so my digitals will be 50% off for 1 week. It's my biggest sale of the year, and it's my way of saying thank you for all of the years of support with my journals and for all of the love that I've received for everything that I've been sharing here on Amity Blue. On the inside of the front cover, I have a little lace pocket. This photo is from Among the Roses, and it's one of my favorite vintage photos ever because of the roses in the background and the two lovely ladies, and you can see other little ladies in the garden. And I just decorated it with some of our washi tape. And the idea is that this is her grandmother. So she left a photo of herself in the start of the journal. And you'll see throughout the journal there's little ephemera pieces that the grandma left to her granddaughter. There's also a vintage letter in the pocket, and I just used some of my digitals and a bit of texture paste to make it a little bit more interesting. And then here in the bottom I just took a little key, distressed it. I chose this one because it has the number 12 on it, and that's my lucky number. That's the day that I was born. And then I just distressed it, tried to make it look more vintage, took some beautiful green silk, and then just stitched some beads on there as a little bookmark. On the first page, I created a pocket out of some mesh lace. I love how it looks because you can see anything that you put into the pocket. So you can see that there's a little button and the rest of the ephemera pieces. In the pocket, I made this cute little ephemera piece. So I created this little flip out of some sentiments and a dried flower that I laminated. And then you can write or journal on the back. So it's like a floating little flip tag that is clear. And I've been loving using these clear kind of embellishments in my journals because when you layer them in a pocket, you can flip it out and see what's behind there, and you can layer this on top of the lace. And if you want a tutorial, I would be happy to share all of the ways that I like to use clear embellishments for my journals. And then we find another piece of ephemera that her dad actually wrote for her. So it says, "To my curious and creative little girl," and then there's a little button on the edge of the tag. And on the ruffle, it says April 4th, 1938, which is the birthday of our lovely Dear Fawn. So the name of the granddaughter is Fawn, which for those of you who have already been playing with my newest kit, Dear Fawn, this is one of the pages that I didn't get to include in the journal just yet since I'm making another one as a gift for someone for Christmas. And this is another sweet little photograph from the Dear Fawn kit. So beautiful vintage, real vintage photographs of little fawns and the sweet little girl that the grandma wrote to. On this page, I created a floating tag with some crepe paper, a butterfly, some velvet. I really like creating these little floating tags that have little butterfly wings on them. They look really vintage and distressed, and I think the effect it gives to our papers. And then when you open this up, it flips out. This is just some ledger. I stitched it with some vintage wallpaper. This is an image from the kit turned into a pocket. There's another little letter inside. And then I just added some of my sentiment washi and some vintage washi to make it look a little bit more interesting and a little bit more vintage. This is my favorite pocket out of the whole journal. I love the sari silk. It's just so gorgeous, and the color matches beautifully with the ruffle and the velvet tab. In the pocket, you find another tag. "My dearest Fawn, you will always have a safe place in my heart. You make the wildflowers sing melodies of peace." It's already written just so that you can add it nicely in one of your journals. A beautiful vintage photo of some deers. Turned it into a cabinet card. I love aging all of my ephemera so it looks at least semi-authentic. You know, we're trying to mimic journals of years past. And then on this page, just did some stamping, a bit of washi tape from my collection to add a little bit of design in the corners, especially when you have just a plain tea stain page. I folded the tea stain paper, glued on the dried flower, and then I just added some washi tape from our sentiments to keep it in place. And in the little photo corner, a glassine envelope. And I used some of my washi tape. My soul is a garden. On the inside, a sweet little pressed flower. And I thought it looked as if it's one of these little roses that the grandma pressed for her granddaughter. Those little details is what I think makes a journal feel really authentic if you're trying to go for a vintage theme. Really pretty page. This spread I absolutely love as well because this ruffle is just so luscious. I love the color of it too. This is a wallpaper pocket from the digital. So I just printed out the wallpaper and then I fuzzy cut along the top. So it has a little bit of design. And then this is a vintage letter from one of my kits as well, just tucked in there. And then here, this is some really old paper. It was ripping in the center, so I just had to add a little bit of tape to keep it safe. And then here I used some of my washi tape. I thought the colors went really well together next to the ruffle. And a really pretty tag from the kit and a cabinet card as well. The colors are just so gorgeous. Another one of my pressed flowers. And with washi, I just put in the Garden of Life. And I just attached that on a paper clip so you can tip it in, you can move it. It's just really pretty. Here, a little text spot with a scrap piece of paper, fabric tab, and then another sweet little fawn photo. This was from a postcard from the 60s. Some perfect writing space. And it's a little glossy, and it's actually an old tape transfer that I was experimenting with, and it had some writing on it. I just love the texture. I think it looks really old. And then I used a pressed flower, stuck it on with some washi tape, and some vintage lace as a sample. On certain pages, you kind of want to leave them a little bit more blank and neutral, but you can still add decoration on the edges. And now this page is not a blank page. It has more details to it that make it feel a lot more fun when you're flipping through the pages. This, just some ruffles at the bottom. I added some paint here since I'm going to be journaling. A sweet little quote about a bird here. More journaling space, some of my washi, more of that vintage brown paper. I love the texture of it. Some stamping and distressing. On this page, I included a little scrap piece, and I wrote, "I ripped a part of my dress on a thorn bush." So this is supposed to be this little flip out, a piece of Fawn's dress that her grandma stuck in here with a pin. So those little details is what I think I have so much fun with when I make a journal. On this page, found a way to fold the paper. There's a pocket here on the bottom, and then I also made a pocket here at the top. One of the Denison tags, but I just removed the writing so you could do journaling. Beautiful teal silk in the prettiest color, and then a fuzzy cut from the wallpaper. Now on the second signature in the pocket, a vintage photo of some deer, and then a postcard. I just used some of my washi tape to decorate the edge and to also keep it from ripping. And on this page, I stitched some really old Victorian lace on the edge. Gorgeous texture. My favorite is when I can see the lace peeking out. It reminds me of my little cuffs. So I love that. On this page, I just created a little pocket here, little bits of washi everywhere, and a part of a vintage letter. This page is really fun. I stitched a bit of a hanky, like a vintage hanky. You can see, and it's stained, and I really liked that little detail. I thought it looked authentic to the story. And some old sage paper, some washi, and an old envelope. This is the envelope that actually had all of those letters on the inside. And it just looks so old and so beautiful already. So this page was fun to make. I really like adding bits of fabric and lace wherever I can. Some more lace here, and on the inside, a pressed flower, some washi. I did some distressing on here to make it look a little bit more aged. On this page, did some stamping, that same fabric that we used on this page. I used the other part that I tore up, and then I stitched it onto the tea-stained paper. And this is one of my little index cards, book index cards. They're really aged. I did not do this. It's like natural staining, but I love these cards. I think they just look so cool. I have a ton of these, so I think I might scan them. And I just put one of my sentiments from my washi, her message. And then you can go ahead and do your journaling. And I loved how organic and torn this pocket was. So on this paper clip, a little key charm, the key that took Fawn to her grandmother's attic, where she found this beautiful journal that she made for her. Same thing, the paper was ripping since it was very old, so I used some of my washi tape, fuzzy cut a part of one of the papers, and just made a little tag from one of the printables. And it looks old and authentic, but it's actually just printed out. So that just tucks in there. And here I used a sample of some old French fabric. I love the striping, and I just attached it with a pin and some of my little ribbon washi. I thought it looked so cute together, just playing around. This page I really liked. So simple, but I just love pages where I use the photo corners. This is a postcard from Butterfly Notes. I love this color. This is from the Vintage Backgrounds kit. It's just so perfect as like filler paper between your music sheets and your tea stain papers. This music sheet, this page, is what started the whole idea of the Dear Fawn kit, like a woodland themed music book. So it's all of the distressing is actually real. It already had all of these little tape pieces. I just put some tape in the center to make sure it didn't rip. But I turned the cover into the signature and added a little pocket. So the reason why it looks a little wonky here on the bottom is because there's actually, maybe you can see, maybe, there was an image that I didn't really like here at the bottom, and I didn't like the color, so I covered it up. I hope it doesn't look awkward. I think it looks nice, but I covered it up with some embossed paper, and I just love this page so much. And then I left this word here, solo, since it is, you know, a music book. And the cover of the book was Afternoon of a Fawn. This was the inspiration towards creating the Dear Fawn kit. And I've been collecting like woodland nature, little deer photos and postcards for the longest time now. And it was just time to make a really pretty little nature woodland kit. And then of course a little ruffle, but I love, 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 love the middle signature. And I could even add pressed flowers here. Just decorate it in so many ways. So I'm still not finished 100% decorating the journal, if you can believe it, but it's finished for now. This is the other part of the music sheet, and just some of my tape here, some random pieces of tape, a little fuzzy cut wallpaper, the other side of that French, beautiful French sage paper. Turned one of the photos from the kit into a pocket, and just a vintage tag that I also made. Sometimes simple is better. And then the backing of this was some old ledger. On this tea stained, I just focused the decoration on the edges. Here's some of my little washi that looks like a piece of ribbon, some old lace, and a little millinery flower. And so the idea was, this is our little fawn when she was a little girl, and her little dress that she was wearing. This is a sample of it that her grandma kept. And the flower that she was picking, her grandma kept that as well. I love this photograph so much. It's my favorite photo from Meadow Morning. It's these little details that I think make a journal feel like authentic in a way, even though we're recreating those vintage styles with the materials and the things that we have. Here, these two pages, pretty simple. Just use some of my washi. I love this one. When you're using washi tape, especially the ones that we make, it's really good quality and blends in with your papers, and you can also kind of fold them and warp them so that it looks like it's an old piece of paper or an old piece of tape. Try manipulating it by folding it on top of your papers, and it makes it look even more vintage and distressed. Of course, lace paper, a lace pocket, and another one of those letters from the envelope. And then here's another one of my transparent like little embellishments that I made. A pressed daisy, you can see it a little bit better there. And I turned it into like a little photo slide. I came across these at an antique store, and they come with so many different little photos. Some of them I don't really like, some of them are sweet and cute. So the ones that I don't really like the photo on the inside, I just with an X-Acto knife cut out the photo, and then I altered it by adding some paper. My washi, the sweetest bloom, and I think it looks so simple but so elegant and beautiful. This is actually a paper bag that I just liked the texture of, so it went in my journal. A fabric tab here, and the last page. So here this little piece opens up of the paper bag. This is an old postcard from the kit, a sweet little cottage in the meadow, and our sweet fawn went up here in the attic and opened it up with her key, and she found this journal. some washi so that we could just flip it out easily, and then on the back I decorated with some of my washi tape as well. But you could do your journaling back there. And then on the back cover, or the inside of the back cover, I did a little collage of some of my digitals. I chose this paper that said March since my birthday is March 12th. As I altered the key that had the number 12, I just thought that that would be, you know, a way for me to put a part of myself in the journal. I just collaged the back cover and I just finished it with a sentiment from one of our washis. Happiness is reflective. A sweet little silk blue ruffle, and that is the entire journal. And of course the back cover is collaged with all kinds of laces and linens and doilies. In the beginning, I just wanted to experiment with how to create a journal in a different color palette, in a different style than what I've done previously. And throughout the process of creating this journal, I was inspired to make a few, you know, hopefully beautiful kits that you all love for years to come, to create your own journals. I love the theme of the grandma and the granddaughter because I find it so beautiful. Relationships between grandmother, granddaughter, mothers, and their mothers, or mothers and daughters. So that's what always inspires me, is family, and especially generations to come. I hope, you know, they will appreciate these stories that are being told. Either you can use your own story or you can make up a story and just pour your creativity into it and end up with a journal that is an heirloom, either for yourself or for someone who falls in love with your work and your creativity and your story. I will leave everything linked below to the printables that I used to make this. Make sure you take advantage of the Black Friday sale while it's available. I will link below when the sale starts and when it ends. And I will be back very soon as I have some really special holiday and Christmas surprises to share with you. It's my favorite time of the year. Sending you all so much peace, so much love, and I really hope that you enjoyed this flip through and that I brought you some inspiration to perhaps create your own.